Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this Week 13 edition of Inside the Zone. A beautiful day out there.
Sure is.
Snow coming down. It's playoff football time, so we ought to have a little
football weather.
Yeah, we ought to have some flakes coming down. It is regional championship night this coming Friday on the Highlight Zone, and we got a lot of teams making trips, but one team not making a trip is Homestead. They get to play at home in 6A. Carmel has to drive up for that one. But Carmel, when you look at what they do on paper, there wasn't anything that necessarily stuck out to me.
Right.
But they are just a very solid across-the-board football team. And obviously, Homestead is playing good football. Struggled with Noblesville a couple weeks ago,
Sure.
but kind of got their mojo back, Jake Archbold style, this past Friday against Carroll. How do you see this one? Because I think it's fair to say that most people outside of the Homestead community are thinking, oh, it's Carmel. It's going to be business as usual. They're just going to, those indie teams are going to come up and take care. What do you think about that, and what can Homestead do to not only be successful, but maybe win this football game?
Well, it's going to begin and end, I think, on the offensive side of the football. They need to have a dynamic night. Look, Carmel lines up a defensive lineman that's going to Penn State. They line up an outside linebacker that's going to Indiana. As usual, Carmel has a lot of D1 prospects on that team, particularly that defense. So how we saw Homestead execute last Friday, keeping Carroll on their toes a little bit off balance, putting Jake Archbold in Wildcat, having him throw even out of the Wildcat once. Running game was solid. Having Luke Goody pass the ball around to a multitude of receivers. They need to keep Carmel off balance on defense. However, that may work out.
When you take a look at that defense, how much of a challenge is it going to be for this Homestead offensive line? They've played very well all year. That was, I think, one of the question marks coming into the season. Porter Haught was gone. He was down at Ball State. They had some juniors on that offensive line, but they have played very well. The All-SAC team littered with Homestead offensive linemen. So I think they've been a little bit better than maybe people outside of Homestead would have believed. But this is going to be, no doubt, their biggest test of the season. As you mentioned, some of those guys playing at major D1 colleges.
Yeah, right. So we had 3 Homestead offensive linemen on the first 2 teams of the All-SAC team. So very standout players. But they haven't been tested like they're going to be tested on Friday. I think it's safe to say that Snyder's defensive front was not as menacing as it usually is, even though Giannini Belizaire is a phenomenal player. Bishop DeWenger is tough in the trenches, but they're not Carmel quality. So it is going to be the biggest test of the season for Homestead up front on both sides of the football, but especially on offense.
I want to ask you this because I think we have been talking a lot about Griffin Eifert's individual performance on Friday night, were it not for Jake Archbold's individual performance. 4 interceptions on defense. Scored 4 ways in terms of touchdowns, running, catching, throwing, pick 6. Have you ever seen, I think in my 10 or 12 years here in Fort Wayne, I don't think I've ever seen a better individual performance in a big game than the one I saw from Jake Archbold last week.
It was phenomenal, and I'm wondering, was that the plan with Jake Archbold in that game, or was the game kind of directing toward, okay, we need to get the ball in the hands of Jake Archbold? I'm sure part of the game plan was that Wildcat, but did they use it more often based on how Jake was playing? So it was a phenomenal effort. USA Today recognized it on their website, on their high school website. So a lot of play for Mr. Archbold. And it was great to see because last year I just think he wasn't in his comfort zone splitting snaps, nor was Luke Goody, splitting snaps at quarterback. But, man, Jake said, I'm going to come in this year. I'm going to do anything I possibly can for this team. He's playing in the slot. He's playing in the outside. He's playing in the defensive backfield. What a game for the kid. And they're going to need another Herculean performance, not just from Jake, but that entire team to beat the Greyhounds on Friday.
John Harrell's website has this pegged as a 35-14 win by Carmel. Do you think it'll be closer than that? And can Homestead win this football game? I think ultimately that's the big question.
I think, you can win a game. Carmel especially comes out, makes some mistakes, give Homestead some short fields, turns the ball over. It's just very difficult when you play down there. Everybody wants to look at what the record and 3 losses for Carmel, but the only team that really went through that Indy schedule unscathed really was Avon. But look at the 6A South that's left. What is it? Ben Davis, Center Grove, another MIC team, and like a 5 and 6 team.
It's just it's a gauntlet.
I mean, it's just you throw the schedules out when you're down there. And so Carmel, I think, is as good as they've done. So Homestead beat them the first time they played way back in 1998, 27-3, when Homestead went to the state championship game. Since then, they've played 3 times. Homestead has a total of 14 points in those 3 games, all losses. So hopefully that trend ends coming up on Friday.
Offense at a premium then for Homestead in this game based on the history.